أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I am very happy that you accepted my invitation, and this is also my first time, so let's see how the flow goes, and also considering that you have got limited time here, and Bismillah, let's get started. So,
MashaAllah.
Sister Milahan, would you tell me about, so for the audience, watching, your and also those who know you and those who do not know you, a little bit more about yourself, so that we know you.
Okay, so you want me just to give like a little rundown on what I do on
Yeah,
the channel, or just some basic
briefly about yourself, about how you came to the transition phase and as Islam, a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I grew up partly in Utah and in Philadelphia. I kind of came from a broken family. I got really interested in Islam because I looked up certain things about marriage advice from Mufti Menk back with his older lectures, not necessarily his newest ones. And I started getting very curious, which led me down a path of self-study. And then, interestingly enough, there was the MMA match between Conor McGregor and Habib, the fighter, the Muslim fighter from Dagestan. And there was a contrast of the haughtiness of Conor McGregor, which was very similar to my ego, and then me being exposed to this Muslim fighter who had a sort of fortitude that inspired me to explore more about Islam, because I saw that this Muslim fighter had extreme discipline, and I didn't really understand at that time that somebody could have strength and intimidation and self-control in such a stoic manner. I thought you had to act more like Conor McGregor. And then the more I studied about Islam, the more I noticed what sabr was, what patience was, what being forbearing is. And that inspired me to continue reading. And then I started reading the Quran on my YouTube channel, kept going. I read a book on Aisha. I read The Sealed Nectar, lots of it, all kinds of fun things on and off camera. And then eventually, alhamdulillah, I said my shahada. And ever since then, I've been digging away.
Sister
I try to
Milahan,
put it as possible, sorry.
no worries. How did you feel the moment when you converted to Islam? What was your feeling at that time?
So it occurred when I had a very interesting dream at night where I was in this neighborhood. There was a house and there was people inside, and it was during nighttime. And there was a sort of danger going on in the neighborhood, but for some reason in the dream, I didn't want to go inside the house. And it was a typical California home in the hood. They have a certain look and architecture, and I didn't want to go in. And to make the story shorter, when I woke up, I had this intense motivation, and I had been being targeted by a stalker hacker, and so much pressure was coming upon me on dealing with that. And I felt this like angst to just go say my shahada. And so I got motivated. I took my backpack and I walked by the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and proclaimed my shahada by the ocean. I kind of shouted it over the water. No one was around. And I was super motivated. And then afterwards, I cried and walked home. And it's about a good 30-minute walk. So the whole time I'm walking there, I'm super motivated. Like, this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say my oath. I got to make sure I say it right.
Yes,
I
yes.
actually recorded that and put it on the YouTube channel. I believe I titled it, "Are You Ready?" But yeah, that's where I said it. And I wanted to go by the water because it's just the perfect location. I didn't want to just say it at home. Like, I wanted to see like this landscape because it's refreshing and be like, it's a new beginning. And then the whole way home, I'm like wiping tears away, super motivated. And cars are driving by, and I'm like, I don't want anyone to think like something weird, but I want to, walk it home. And then I came home, and the first video I did After that was in a blue niqab, and then ever since then, I've always had Islamic clothing on in one form or another.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the transition between you not wearing hijab and then at a certain stage embracing Islam altogether, you find it very peaceful, correct?
Yes. Oh, you mean like I didn't have any longing for the older clothes. You know, it didn't feel the same anymore. A huge shift happened. Huge shift to where I felt like it's more like a covering, a safety net, wearing it with pride, being very happy about it, wanting to put it. So if I didn't have it, I would feel quite uncouth, quite exposed. But it was a very interesting compulsion because it felt like a covering. And some people say, oh, well, that's fake. You have to take it easy and go on a hijab journey. And I was like,
Yes.
I didn't need a hijab journey.
Mhm.
I saw the
Interesting.
rule, wear the hijab, and I did
Yes.
it.
I will recite the words of Quran and we'll start from this, okay? أعوذ بالله
Okay.
من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Recite in the name of your Lord. So in your videos, you do a lot of videos about reading and books and a lot of things, correct? And I wanted to ask you
Yes.
this. So let's, for people, for the audience listening and to this, who find themselves quite, wanting to read, quite intrigued to read, but they have work, they are busy with their life. It's difficult for them to read. Probably they have, children. So is there any advice that you would like to give to probably get started? And if read, what to read, where to get started? I would like to hear that.
So if you want to read, there's been a lot of debate in the science on this about ADD and ADHD, attention deficit disorder and whatnot. But I was told I have that, but that is an excuse or a crutch that a lot of students use when they can't concentrate for long periods of time. And so my solution was, which not everyone understands, is to read 20 minutes of one book that you feel in the mood to read, and then 20 minutes of another book that you like, 10 minutes of another book that you like, and then annotate and reflect upon what it is you read, and you'd actually read a lot more. Very few books, when you have ADD, ADHD, can you sit down for many hours. I was only able to really do that with books like Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, silly books like Harry Potter as a kid, right? And I read through this summary of 1,000 hadiths of Sahih Bukhari, and that one was a page turner because it was my first time reading hadith. So every page I was just reading and reading. I didn't want to stop, so it was super motivated. Other than that, if you don't find a book that intrigues you like that, you can sit down, or sometimes you can get those yoga rollers. They're like a foam roller you put behind your neck. You see them sometimes in the gym, and you put your feet up on the wall and you read your book. You lay down, you go outside, you move your body in different ways, in different positions, and you'll actually read a lot more. If you're just sitting in one spot in your chair that's not very comfortable, sometimes you'll get an angst of wanting to check your phone or wanting to eat or fidgeting, things that'll distract you. So if you get comfortable and you move yourself often out and about, you'll actually get a lot more reading done. And then taking mini breaks. Like sometimes I will drink coffee and I'll go outside and stand on my patio, look at the rain, do a little quick bird watching, play with my parrot, right? And then I'll go back to reading. So what I would encourage people to do is that you can do these segments of 10, 15, 20 minutes, annotate, and then reflect on what you read, and then tell someone about something you read. You know, it's like, oh, did you hear about this, this, and that? Oh, I read this, this, and that. Make a simple post on Twitter of some fact you read, or on Facebook, or on MeWe, Getter, whatever app you're using. Even if only like 10 people even care, you're still taking out that information and putting it out into the world, which will make you remember it more. So you'll feel more satisfied with your reading and felt like you accomplished something, which will motivate you to read more. So there's all these little brain habits that I have to keep me going, because I don't let some psychologists say like, "Oh, you have this, so you have some type of excuse." It's like, no, I still read way more than someone who doesn't have that, so it doesn't match with me. And I was part of 3 honor societies, so obviously I was performing excessively high considering such a diagnosis. We have a lot of psychologists in California, like they're always trying to find something to give you an excuse. So I found a solution for it, which was small segments of reading and of different topics. Because some people, when they see my channel, they're like, "You have all these different topics. Why don't you just stick to one?" If you have ADHD or ADD, and just in general, you're going to get burnt out more faster and you'll lose interest. Like if you plow through, you may impress a lot of people, but you have to give your brain a break to digest, reflect, and then move on to the next. Because if you think about it, you watch a news segment, the news talks about this, this, and that, right? Even if you watch a TV series, each episode is different. It's not the same thing over and over, even though there's a common theme underneath. Oftentimes, we see different things all day and we deal with it just fine. But for some reason, people think that if you read different books at different times, you're confused or disorganized. Rather, no, you see different things all day, different customers, if you have a customer service job, different problems at your work present themselves. If you're a chef, you got to cook this steak, you got to cook the shrimp. You're multitasking through different mediums, different things that you're working with. Same with books. I think people just get intimidated and they don't understand kind of hyper-focused bibliophile nerds and how kind of eccentric they can be, because you're delving into information, and people who deal with lots of information all day have their ways of processing it and spreading it. And so the methodology to some who don't do that can seem kind of odd, but to people who try to actually examine the methodology, they can kind of see the wisdom in it and the brilliance in it. Because I don't believe in taking something like Adderall for it. I'm not into that. But some people will say, "Oh, if you have ADHD, ADD, if you want to focus, you take Adderall," which to me is basically a form of meth. Not to shame anyone who takes it, but being on pills for the rest of my life to read books and study, it's not something I'm into. I'll find a way around it, which is to read a little bit of history, read a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Islam, a little bit of cooking, whatever it is. And that is a safer, more productive route, and I don't have to pay for some type of pills, right?
Yes.
And so that's how I get around it. So if you want encouraging advice to read, you need to also have different topics, like a little bit of poetry. Some people mock having things that are non-academic, but I'd say it gives your brain a break and you're actually learning grammar, formulating imagery in your mind. And as long as you make it halal and you argue with the text, like let's say I've read Game of Thrones books, right? There's some dumb haram things in there. So I'll just argue with the text and like, "Oh, what a buffoon," and then I don't feel like it has such like an input on me. Like if I read something in there that's like, that's not what we contend in Islam, this is trash, or I skip over it, right? So there's a way you can interact with the text and not just let it lead you, but you kind of wrestle and grapple with the text automatically. And so people who read a lot, they don't approach books the same way, hook, line, and sinker, as people who don't read as much, because we're processing so much information. We don't just believe everything we read, nor do we adopt everything we read. We're looking at it from an objective perspective with also some subjectivity, but we're waiting for the book to present itself. And when we finish it, we judge it, and then we can recycle the book or give it to somebody and we move on. Some people think that if you read something means you 100% endorse it, you agree with everything, and you're going to be a cult member of the book. Yes. No, it's not really necessarily how it works. So people should take easy steps, get in a comfortable environment. I like to read early in the mornings. My favorite is either at like 9 a.m. because it's not too hot, not too cold. And then later on in the evening after 5 o'clock because the hustle and bustle of the workers and the atmosphere is more calm. So if I was in the city, some people like to zone out of the city and sit on a bench while people are walking around. I don't, because you could get attacked. There's homeless people, there's drug addicts. It's not a safe place to read. So going outside to a very peaceful park, sitting at a cafe if that's your thing, being at home and creating a little space for you. I invested in a very nice desk, kind of a Victorian looking desk, and I used to paint pictures, and I've gotten paint on that desk, but the desk is mine. You know what I mean? It's my area. And so I got stacks of books there, and I have books on the wall. And I'll have a scented candle or a cinnamon incense and a hot tea or a coffee or a pastry, and I will just zone out and relax. Now, I have still been making time to read, even with a newborn baby and with an elementary school kid, because as I read, I'll have my little one write hadiths or she'll read, and then she earns relaxation time. And so she understands from a very young age that what is study time? It's just quiet time. It's time to read and learn, trying to grow our brains. And it wasn't as hard of a transition. If you're giving your kid an iPad and headphones all the time and just putting them in a corner, and then you try to have a huge shift in them to be quiet or to want to study, that's going to be a lot harder. So if you start from young age and you are disciplined and you keep them at it, it'll become like second nature to where they'll do it themselves. And so when my little baby takes a nap and I estimate my time, like, okay, how much have I slept? Should I sleep or should I read or should I eat or what should I do? And then I find a way to squeeze in knowledge. And as the baby gets older, it gets easier. First month, it's harder because they're needing to nurse a lot. But as the baby ages, they sleep a little longer, you sleep more, and you get your strength back, and then you can get back to your reading schedule. If your kids are not teeny tiny tots, I'd say you have a lot of opportunities to read. And
Yes.
even when my little one was small, my first child, I used to put her in a high chair, let her color, and then I'd read in the kitchen next to the high chair. Or I would lay down, read, and she'd crawl all over me and play with my hair and draw on my leg, and I'd be reading. So you find ways to keep them entertained while you read, even if they're going to be crawling on you, pulling on your hair, interrupting you, saying, "Look at
Focused.
this, look at this." Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I find a way, but you just have to have patience with them because they don't understand what you're doing. And if you have your husband or your sister, your cousin, someone can watch them for a few minutes. And every time you read, just appreciate that you got some access to knowledge, keeping a positive attitude. Because today
Can I
people want
interrupt
to
you,
have
sister?
videos. Oh, yeah.
Can I? Yeah, I'll interrupt you here, but then you can continue. Because what I like about your videos is that it's not like an entire book that you post in a video. It's like chunks that you keep on posting, and then you detail every bit of it. So if every video that you have, kind of you explain it, and then because before the videos that I used to watch, you had those things like where you explain something. Especially one of the interesting topics that I enjoyed was American Indian legends, but that was incomplete.
Oh, yeah.
That was incomplete, yes. And the stories were quite strange and bizarre and weird, and they're like all over the places. Like, but it was very interesting because how the people wrote it, and it was very interesting because I enjoyed those stories. So also, so my question would be that if somebody wants to read, would he prefer going um, to a library or going uh, to an online, Kindle thing, or going somewhere else, or he just supposed to stay and read? Like any ideas you have?
I love the library. My favorite place in the college was the library. And I sat in the same spot every time I could, unless someone took my spot, which was by a window, great view, and I really liked it. I felt it was super silent, quiet. You get motivated by seeing other people read, and just the smell of the books. It was just great. I really enjoyed reading in the library because it was the atmosphere for it. And I would say go to a library most definitely, because then it inspires you little by little, and you get into a mindset. Like when you go to the gym, okay, it's time to work out. You walk into the classroom, you put your bag down, you know what time it is. Same thing with the library. You know this is time to read and shut the world out, right? It's time for you and knowledge. And if you want to use your phone, you can put on the sound of the ocean, sound of rain, so that the phone is there because our eyes constantly look at it and we want to touch it. But you can have it there and put in your headphones, have the sound of rain and read, and then take little mini breaks, look around, see what some people are doing, because sometimes our eyes want to wander. And then you look out the window, if there's a window or something like that, and then you go back into it, right? You go back into it, you control your brain and focus it back on the structure. But if you want to go to a peaceful park, because everyone has different layouts for where they live, you can do that. But you can also just make your home really comfy. That's why I always have scented candles. I always try to have a very dim lit environment. I try to make my desk as comfy as possible. You try to emphasize the environment to where it has a condition for learning. And so that is something I recommend. And don't try to read with the TV on, you know, or
Yeah.
with like music on. Don't do that. That's
Distraction.
totally distracting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I would highly recommend you to try different spots. You can go sit by the ocean. You can go, maybe when you go hiking, you take your book with you and then you read a little bit as you eat your sandwich on the top of the hike. And then you go back down. And during work, if you want to read in your car on your break and you don't want to read around your coworkers because they're judgmental, have something special in your car for every time you read, some chocolate bar, some some type of candy, some type of little fun treat that's special just for your reading times while you're reading in your car at work. And making the place where you sit very comfortable and relaxed, and cracking the window, having nice ventilation, and zoning out and just trying to read. There's a lot of different ways for us to read, and the way you discover what works is by trying many different options. That's what I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So I think reading nowadays, I think there needs to be pushed a lot of emphasis on reading, because today, like, a lot of people don't read, and they're not interested to read, like in general, because of a lot of distractions we have in the media world and such. So I think very important to focus on reading, so that, because reading, Sister Milahan, is something, is about, like, so many authors who are not even alive, correct? So many politicians, historians, businessmen, whatnot, like authors who have written and passed away from this world, who are no longer alive at the moment. We have the access to actually read them, read their minds, what they say, what they have. And I think that's
Yes.
kind of amazing to me, because I might not be able to, say hello or hi to them personally, but I can actually see what they've written, what they have for the future world. And I think that is quite astounding to have with us. I will jump here and I will go to the next question, and that is going to be about starting business. And business as in, because currently previously there was a pandemic and a lot of inflation inflicted world we're currently living in, and people started moving on to business because they found that their markets were breaking, people were losing jobs on a large scale. So what is your view on that, Mr. Milan?
I say go for it. The Muslim community needs all types of entrepreneurs creating their unique businesses. And whether it's you have a pen company, a custom sweaters company, you sell plants, you have a farm, you sell animal pelts, you are a taxidermist, any type of business you start, I say go for it, because it contributes to the Ummah, and everyone can't just be engineers and stuff like that. We have to have a very diverse group of people, and we shouldn't look down upon people who want to have a food truck, or they want to, create their own magazine, whatever business that they want to get into. I'd say go for it, because we have to become financially independent. We have to create different types of jobs and create a parallel economy if we want to survive and be truly free in what we perceive to be a free market. And with the technologies we have today, we can diversify our incomes in many little nest eggs so that if there is a time of chaos or government oppression or religious oppression towards us, we're able to endure like the
Yes.
Amish, like the Mennonites,
Yeah.
who are able to keep on going
Yeah.
and to say, okay, you won't give me your banking, because debanking is becoming a very popular thing now. If you disagree with certain people, you'll be debanked, deplatformed. And so people have discovered, okay, we're going towards a Chinese style social credit score where they'll be able to shut you down and ruin your life and really persecute you and stuff like that. We have to make sure we're able to keep on sailing. And so people creating their own businesses instead of doing a 9 to 5 for a corporation, I would say smart, or working at a corporation, but then trying to build up their side hustles, right? And keeping that private from their enemies as well. You should have businesses that people know about and then ones that you keep private,
Yes. Yes.
because
Because
your enemies will try to persecute you, especially the LinkedIn crowd. They brag about what they do, but at the same time, they have to really be mindful about who they're letting know where their money is and what they do, right? Because cancel culture is a very real thing and it's coming hard. And there are Muslims who definitely want to cancel each other. And then there's secularists who want to cancel Muslims and so on and so forth. So diversifying your income is a safety net, it's a protection. So definitely start it.
the industry wants us to work and to kind of make us slaves. I think it's very important to create businesses because through that will we be able to achieve a sense of independence from being enslaved, and through that we will be able to kind of exit out from that kind of environment, which I think is super toxic because people who work under that environment are 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 kind of hurt, are kind of hurt because you're supposed to say yes, 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 yes to everything. You're supposed to obey the orders. You're supposed to act in a specific way, like you're listening, like you're obeying, like you have to obey all the time. So that is very important because that thing, and especially in Islam, like business has got a lot of like emphasis, like a lot of value, like points, you know, rather than jobs and stuff. So you talk a lot about feminists and feminism.
Yeah.
There's a lot of feminist movement going on here, Mr. Milahan. There's no such thing. Okay, it's not like super crazy, like as you mentioned, because you are in a different part of the world and I'm in a different part of the world. So how would you describe good feminism and how would you describe like toxic feminism? And is there something like good feminism or is there something like toxic feminism? Could you explain that a little bit?
This very difficult question comes to mind when we think of the word feminism, because on one spectrum, when you see some men who are very brutal, right, towards their women, during the 1920s in America, I mean, there were stereotypes of Irish men or Italian men drinking a lot and then beating their wives who had like a bunch of kids, and then the women were completely vulnerable and oppressed, which made women become radicalized, and that's what gave birth to the feminist movement, part of it, right? So women saw an injustice, they wanted to rectify it, and then it kind of went the route all revolutionary movements go, is it became excessive. And now it's about abortion is self-care,
Yes.
promiscuity is promoted. You shouldn't shame women for their body if they're overweight. You shouldn't promote fitness. You shouldn't shame women for OnlyFans. Women should be allowed to have multiple boyfriends, husbands at a time, and a man shouldn't complain. There's definitely a snowball effect of how we allowed this, and then it became so extreme to the point where now degeneracy is the norm. But the new leftists of America, they don't see it as degeneracy, they see it as progress, because they see religious conservatism of morality to be prude backwards and primitive, and they see their image of the future to be quite different. So when you have women who are, let's say, are in another nation, who they have really horrible stereotypes put upon them by some men, and they just want to have some level up or some reprieve, that I can kind of see where they're coming from. But in America, when you have like a woman who slaps her man in public and dumps a drink on his head and calls him all sorts of names, and that's empowering because she's dominating him and she's so wild out, that is a form of psychological abuse. And so some feminists see like a very aggressive approach towards men to be a sort of repayment, sort of a payback. So you have some feminists who they want to smash the patriarchy and then put in a matriarchy, and there's a long rabbit hole you can get into their psychological approaches, how they do this, their methodologies, and the different sects within feminism and what they promote and what they push. But if you think about it, there's even a split in the feminist movement where when people ask now, what is a woman? Right? They say, what is a woman? And then you're like, oh, so even
Because
they're splitting.
they've mixed everything. They've mixed the genders. They've mixed everything. They're confusing everything. They're confusing everyone. Even though who's sane, I believe, is going to be like, are you like a man or woman? You know, that's what I think, because that's what their agenda. That's what they're promoting, right?
Exactly. And so even them, they've gone so far that they're like, what have we done? You know, it's almost like you've let out. There's this old saying of Pandora's box, where there was a box of this woman Pandora, and she opened it and let all these evils out. It's like a cliche saying we have. So they started this feminist movement. They got kind of what they wanted with voting, women being allowed in the workplace and stuff like that. And now it's gone so far as to uh, extreme abortion culture, extreme promiscuity culture, women putting careers over their children and then being deeply depressed later on. You see them posting their regrets quite often on social media, and people highlight those quite frequently, and I post some as well, just to kind of show that there's this utopian ideal that is pushed, and then in reality it doesn't work out that way for so many women, and they kind of wish they would have just had a more simplistic life of family and children and things like that, instead of the high heels of the corporate office, you know, the kind of eagle-eyed corporatism that doesn't really fulfill your soul as effectively as family.
Yes,
And
it's a,
so, yeah,
what I see missing is in the entire spectrum is for me, the most important thing is spirituality. For me, I would put that on the number one list, you know, because I think spiritual well-being is super important in today's world, where people are depressed, people are anxiety-filled, whatnot, you know. And I think Quran is one of the best healers of, you know, spiritual being. And I think any other place that we see, like you know, the job market or the feministic, I don't know, we call it the feminist movement, they have not even a single small percent, not even a cent of spirituality in their behaviors or activities. And so I do not value it. You know, I do not see it as something
I
sacred.
think there's their spirituality is occultism. Their spirituality is occultism, borderline Satanism. That's their spirituality. This sort of pagan, Wiccan, witchy type of philosophy. If you examine a lot of their posts and you study those occultic realms, you can see where they go. A lot of their philosophy comes from that. So their spirituality isn't pure as ours. It's not wholesome like ours. Rather, it's the inversion. So they're the opposite of a pious Muslim sister or a pious Muslim brother.
Yes, and
They're quite, yeah.
sometimes I think, like, how is it even possible for a human being to be like that? You know, like they are physically humans, but their actions are like animals, you know, and that is super terrible.
Yes. I mean, a pig will sit on its baby and eat it sometimes, but most animals don't eat and hurt their own young. They would sacrifice their life for their young. But feminists will do an abortion dance on TikTok in an abortion clinic and point at their stomach and say, this isn't human, it's a clump of cells. And then have a cake that says aborted and have a party that says abortion party. So that's how inhumane some of these feminists are, where they take joy at the dismembering and culling of their own child. It's like an Aztec temple, where human sacrifice and blood, when previously Christianity and Islam did an excellent job on ridding that from the world. And so in my opinion, their spirituality is occultism, and they may not admit that. But if you observe them, if it talks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a duck. And some of them are very weird Buddhistic type of people. So there is that. But if you read some Buddhist texts, they're not radical feminists. I mean, they actually are quite different. So each faith has their version of female rights and responsibilities and roles. But the secular liberal atheists, I believe they serve the occultic agenda. That's why they get so angry when a Muslim woman from the West likes to cover, because they see it as like an affront to their mission.
Exactly,
like, you're
exactly.
Covering up.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And Sister Milahan, there was FIFA, here in Doha, Qatar, and what BBC did was that initially with the opening ceremony there was the Quran recitation here, and BBC just blocked it off, to just cut it entirely, that part of the opening
Really?
ceremony.
That's
Yes,
really sad.
yes, that is sad. That's super sad.
In the
Because
Super Bowl, when they had the Super Bowl in America, and it's all degeneracy and women shaking their booties and acting crazy and almost half naked, they show that, right? The Super Bowl, I don't know if you've ever watched it. I gave up watching it quite some time ago, but it's pure degeneracy.
yeah, yeah, and
They cut off the Quran segment? Oh my gosh.
exactly. There was a Quran
Oh,
recitation in the beginning, and like so many people from all over the world, they're just sitting in the stadium. It's packed. It's like lights are off. It's like the beginning of the entire ceremony. And there's like the Quran recitation going on, and the thing is that that's the point where the media should be like recording stuff, but that's the point they actually remove the stuff. And in the West, because I think they're kind of promoting like their own culture. They want everyone to follow them, the American culture, everyone to be Americanized, everyone to look American, everyone to dress American, everyone to feel American, everyone to believe American. And so this propaganda machine is being pumped everywhere. And I think that is what it is, because every country has its own cultures, has its own values. Even the American Indian legends, right? They had their own cultures and
yes.
beliefs. So, I mean, it's very wrong to kind of bully another nation in that sense, because, it's kind of a target here, because I think it's clear animosity, because I tried, for me, I kind of try to rationalize things. I try to understand, like, what is the purpose? But sometimes there is no purpose. It's just out of context. It just feels like bully.
Their globalization efforts. So the secular liberals will want to spread democracy. They want their ideology to be the hegemonic force, and they're going to do that by any means necessary. And they want every theocratic leaning nation to bend to their will, to become like them. And if you look at many pockets in America, the decay, the rise of, we have over 13 million single mothers. We have mass abortions. We have so many drug addicts. We have so many things we need to fix before we try to spread our democracy to other nations. But we're not very self-reflective anymore in America. We have people who say like they'll burn the American flag, they riot, they protest over police brutality, but they're not really motivated to gather like that for building community centers or for positive things. Rioting and hatred and like violence and malice are very addicting here. And so that's what activism is in America. And so when they go abroad, they kind of spread that fitna of, this is how your country should change so that you allow this type of behavior, right? We're going to change you because you're this way or that way, and we want you to be this way. but they're not focusing on what is a mother's role, what is a father's role. America is changing that. They're changing the definition of what it even means to be a woman, man. And
Yes,
they're
yes.
saying boys should
LGBT
cry,
and
and
oof, terrible things they're
yeah, and
promoting.
like,
Exactly.
and they're doing gender reassignment surgery. And in California, here where I am, it's becoming a sanctuary state for underage minors
Yes,
to
yes.
undergo
Refuge.
like
Re
these, yeah, for
yeah,
these people to alter their bodies
yeah.
physically through surgery and chemically through pills
So all
against their parents' consent.
yeah. So from what I'm getting it correct, correct me if I'm wrong, is that people from different states they flock to California to kind of get refuge. Is that correct?
Yeah, to get their procedures done.
Yeah.
And so the government of California, which is secular liberal, is trying to go around the religious perspective of parental rights. So they want the children to be autonomous and rebellious even, right? Because if your parents say, we won't let you get a tattoo, let alone take a medication that's going to alter your biology for a while, right? Or alter your physical beingness and affect your mental state. No, you're not mature enough. And California is seeking a way around that. And also California legalized loitering for prostitution. What that means is that police can no longer ask you questions on suspicion of you loitering to sell your body. And mothers have been complaining. I shared the video a while back, but mothers have been complaining as they walk down the street. There's all these ladies selling their bodies and dressed inappropriately. I mean, imagine eating dinner and your husband's there and there's a lady right outside who will like ruin your family or give him a disease if he gets tempted. It's quite depressing. And your little boy is looking at this lady and asking
Oh,
you,
it is
Mommy, what's
depressing.
she doing?
Yes,
Yeah. And
yes.
California says that's progress and that
No,
it should
no.
be legal.
It's regress.
Yeah,
Regress.
exactly.
Yes.
And to them, the feminists say that's empowering because she's in control of her money and not
No,
depending on a man, right? So
no.
their morality, they want to put it on Qatar. They want to put it all over the
Yeah,
world.
yeah,
They want them to be the force. They say, oh,
exactly.
I look at this as crusades. It's a new form of crusades, but it's being done digitally through the social media, and it'll be done through school curriculums
Exactly. School
as well.
curriculums. That's so correct. So correct.
Yeah.
That
So
is
it's
so
a form
true.
of
So true.
crusade. So the crusades in the past were physical, sword and shield and horse, the camelback, riding on elephants and such, but now it's a digital type of crusade, and they can control it through their algorithms, through their coding mechanisms, shadow banning, deplatforming, and
Mhm.
the digitization of our world allows the forces that be to push their ideologies. And all the tech companies are all secular liberal atheists. So they got even more power now to shape what you see. I mean, just look at TikTok, how they ban common sense stuff, but the far,
Promiscuity,
far left,
debauchery,
yeah, they
hedonism.
allow their content.
Yes, because for me, as I mentioned, Sister Milan, like spirituality is the most top priority. And whatever I see, the BBC, CNN, whatever, these propagandist movement, they always try to enforce their own ideologies, always try to bully their own things to people, not valuing cultures, not valuing people's own standard. But good thing is, as far as I can say, is that Qatar at the end it stood up to what it had, the rules and stuff. So it was kind of okay
Yeah,
till
I
the end.
saw a lot of people sharing really
Yeah,
positive memes about it, like,
yeah,
yeah, Qatar, finally someone says,
and also like here some people they were like well, like 50-50, so they were like, okay, is this something? Okay, probably go to my home and I'll check what this is about, and probably read about Quran, maybe some hadith. So Bismillah ar-Rahim. ومكر الله والله خير الماكرين والله Allah, and Allah خير, better, makirin, planner, and Allah is the best of planners. So these propagandists are forcing their agenda to kind of bully, to make everyone afraid. But you see, Allah's plan is superior than their own plan.
the generation after me, like my younger sister's generation, they were bombarded with such deep programming that you almost feel sorry for them. The level of degeneracy, and if you just look through some kids' cartoons, what they put in there, you're like, that's like an adult thing. and
Yes.
a lot of cross-dressing, a lot of the characters dressing up as the other gender. Like, you almost feel sorry for them because they had no other choice. They were just put into the swamp and told to swim, and they tried their best, and some of them got eaten by the hippo, got eaten by the crocodile. And so those who made it out are deeply scarred and resentful, I think, and they'll raise their kids differently than how they were raised. So we have hope if we have children, if we build families, and if we struggle, we educate ourselves and read more and don't buy into feminism and push ourselves and understand that we all have a role to play. I think we can combat it. Reading is very powerful because you are able to make your mind stronger without going into debt to a university as high. Right? In America, it's extremely expensive, some of these colleges. And then they oppress people by forcing them to undertake a medical procedure, as you know, which I believe is a violation of your bodily autonomy. I don't think a school should own you in such a way, and that it's up to you. And so they caused a lot of problems. There was immense amounts of problems. So people were looking for different ways to become educated, and a library, reading on your own, and then making your own book clubs, making your own gatherings is a very powerful way to network and create a parallel society and economy, which breeds into the entrepreneurial points we spoke on earlier. It's all connected, right?
Mhm.
To escape their system, you have to build your own,
Exactly.
and you have to
Exactly.
maintain it. And that's
Yes.
what we have to do.
Could you tell me your final words before we end the conversation about the podcast?
I would say go on reading, explore what your interests are, make sure that you feel you can gain something from what you read, and know that even if you don't finish a lot of books a month, that it's still adding to you and you should be proud of yourself for finishing it. If you get halfway through the book and you've done a good job, congratulate yourself and try to make time for it because it'll add to you, add to your mind, add to your culture, uh, and make you a better person, inshallah.
Inshallah.
And you can also write your own books as well by reading others and getting into the flow of different authors. And through reading, you gain different perspectives, and doing so allows you to navigate conversations more effectively and makes you more resilient to temptation, to being led astray, and also improves your grammar and critical thinking skills. So there's so much to be gained. So don't get discouraged and don't feel like because you're not sailing through mass amounts of books that somehow you're not achieving something. Rather, each page you turn is an achievement and you should be proud of that and embrace it. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you for
So,
accepting the invitation, Sister Milahan, and have a wonderful day. I think it's 9 a.m. there or 9:30 a.m. something.
yeah,
9:53.
9:53.
Yes, because here it's 8:53, so it's like plus one. 8:53 p.m.
Oh, hey.
You know. So
Oh, it's opposite.
yeah. So have a wonderful day and take care. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Mashallah. Assalamu alaikum.